It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Wednesday, September 11th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that's got some questions heading into rookie camp.
We got questions, and we still have questions.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here, as always, with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We, as a show, are on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter at Locked On Flyers as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Subscribe or follow us for free over on YouTube or on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, we are recording this. We still do not have a schedule or roster for rookie camp, and probably going to get it while we're talking. So if that happens, we'll try and cut over to that information.
Yeah, they're checking in today, so we're probably going to hear like who's checked in.
Yeah, or like immediately after we finish recording or something like that.
Yeah,
but I think, obviously one of the bigger questions is Alexei Kolosov going to be on that list?
No, nobody expects it. I saw Daily Faceoff just they put something up too. They don't expect him. That's what we've been saying all along, folks. It's just not expected. Especially, I felt like it wasn't going to happen, and then we kept saying, well, we'll see if he hits the ice with Minsk. He did. So I'm pretty sure behind the scenes, they're just trying to either get him out of the deal altogether or get the Flyers to toll the contract. Those are the two choices at this point.
Yep. So we'll see how that list turns out and what they say. In the meantime, some non-rookie Flyers related news. Carter Hart apparently wants to move to Tennessee to train and stay in shape. And he was apparently denied entry into the U.S. And is working on that. It seems to me like it's just not necessary for him to come into the U.S., given that he has pending charges. So, doesn't matter that that's what he wants to do. The U.S. doesn't have to let him in.
No, and I think he's hiring an immigration lawyer. And listen, we talked about this. Once these kinds of charges are pending for somebody, you can't travel, and you definitely can't travel into the U.S. They're not going to let you.
Right.
So I don't expect him to be in the U.S.
I mean, seems like he could travel to Russia if he wanted to, but
sure,
that doesn't seem to be where he's headed at the moment. Things could change, but again, not the Flyers' problem anymore. I guess.
No, it's just something that we thought we'd tell people because they probably have thought about it.
Yeah,
what's going to happen.
Yeah. Russ, we talked on the show Monday about Nick Robertson and if he was a potential option for the Flyers here. He did sign a 1-year deal with the Leafs, but he still could be traded.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is just a reluctant, all right, I'll sign. They have a plan for him. The problem is the plan isn't good. Like, they're going to play him like 10 minutes a game, and he's a better player than that. But right now, until he can get dealt, that's what he's going to have to deal with. So he's probably not happy, but, he's got his money for now. And this makes him more tradable for sure, because now you know what the contract is, and teams know what they can fit in the cap, and it's very cap friendly.
Yeah, absolutely. Another big piece of news around the NHL, Adam Larsson signed a 4-year deal with the Seattle Kraken. And this kind of bridges, a topic we've brought up recently, and also a topic we're about to talk about related to the NHL Player Media Tour, because this is a 4-year deal, $5.25 million cap hit extension. There's a very interesting salary structure related to the salary and bonus. Year 1 is different than years 2, 3, and 4. a kind of different sort of no trade structure as well. This is like a very detailed, like specifically crafted contract, right?
Right. Yeah, it's a lot of finagling, as I would say, going on there. But that's fine. I mean, look, Adam Larson's had a nice career. He was a high draft pick, and he's been a good player. He was never going to be a high offensive player. Uh, when I look at this deal, I see this is pretty similar to what Cam York's going to get. Now, Cam will have more offense, but you got to remember Larson's been in the league longer. So the longer you're in the league, the more you're going to get too. So I think this 5.5 for 4 years is similar to what it's going to get offered to York. If he has a really great offensive year, it might be six, might be 6 times 4. But I think this is right in the ballpark. And so when I saw that, that's because that's how teams do it. That's how agents look at it. And so right now, Cam York's not going to make less than $5.5 million. I can tell you that.
Yeah, I think, the Flyers will probably start off at a slightly lower number, maybe 5 even, and they'll
Right.
settle on 5.5. But
Right.
I think if they offer him anything below 5, that's gonna seem like an insult. But
Yeah.
and that's where this Larson contract, looking at like the crazy structure, I don't know if that's something that Cam York will get, but it will relate to the CBA and all of that.
Well, I
But
mean, the Flyers do need future cap help if they do decide to start to defer some money or do some things like that. They can to kind of help the cap. So that's up to them. They may not do it on this contract because it's not big enough, but they might. Like I don't know.
Yeah. Now, the other interesting aspect of this Larson contract with the Seattle Kraken relates to an issue that was discussed at the NHL Player Media Tour, and that's the tax-free states issue. And do teams in states without personal income tax have an advantage over those where they do tax income? And Washington State is one of those states that don't have an individual personal
Right.
income tax. And so, in a lot of ways, Larson is getting a little bit more money than if he had gone elsewhere, right?
Sure. But, my whole thing with the tax-free states is this. If we take Tampa out of the equation, I mean, Tampa's been a spectacularly run organization with great drafting and development and smart signings, right? And good use of the LTIR. We're not getting into that. But I'm just saying all those things have brought them championships. Just because you're a tax-free state doesn't guarantee you're going to win a championship.
No, that is
And that's my
true.
point. Nashville, I think, is another one of those states. They've never won. So everybody's like, oh, they have this big advantage. Yeah, there's an advantage. But my thing is, other teams have an advantage too. Every kid who's brought up in Ontario wants to play for the Leafs pretty much, especially if they're within, an hour to 2 hours of Toronto, right? So they have that edge. And a lot of them now, the unfortunate thing is sometimes they don't get there until they're like 30, 31, 32, 33, but they all want to go there. The New York Rangers have Madison Square Garden and New York as a backdrop. Players want to play there. Here's the thing. You make your organization good and players will want to play there. The Flyers used to have that edge too, right? So, the tax structure is really a cop out in my mind.
Yeah, I think yes and no. I think when it comes to getting certain free agents, you can make an argument there. The Florida Panthers and Tampa Bay Lightning have both won cups in the last decade.
Hmm.
Tampa with multiple, in Florida without income tax. Your point about the Preds stands, but Texas doesn't have a state income tax, and
Been a while
Nevada
since they
does.
won a cup.
Yeah, Nevada doesn't have a state income tax, and I think the double whammy of them not having the state income tax and the cap shenanigans, I think that kind of puts a focus on them.
Sure.
But if you compare that, and they've also won a cup. So I think
But did they
that,
win a cup because they had all of these crazy contracts that nobody else could sign, or did they win a cup because they were just really good? It's mostly
yeah, but
because
were
they
they
were really
really
good.
good because they could get the guys
I
that
mean,
they
how many
wanted?
players? You know what I mean? You might get one player or two players that way. You could sign a
Yeah.
player to that kind of deal, right? You could sign, like, you could say, hey, this deal with Adam Larsson in Seattle, nobody else could give him. But what if Adam Larsson has a horrible career for Seattle? Nobody's talking about it then.
Yeah, it's just interesting because I think, the Canadian teams are put out by all of this because Canada doesn't have that in any way, shape, or form. And we all know how long it's been since a Canadian team has won a cup.
But that's not the
And
reason. But
there's
I agree
no,
there's a little bit of a disadvantage, but that's not the reason. It's not.
well, totally. And I think that there's something to this conversation. Is it the determining factor of winning a cup? Absolutely not. But it feels unfair. And I think that when things feel unfair, like owners get salty about it and want to make some changes.
Sure. I don't think much is going to come of it, to be honest, because again, this is like the slippery slope. Well, the Canadians all teams have to pay in American dollars. Hey, it's not the player's fault if the Canadian dollar is down. It's just that most of the league is in the United States. That's just a fact. And so that's easier to do it that way. You just have to make more money. And I'm not
Yeah.
worried about the Canadians, right? I mean, they're owned by a big conglomerate. They got plenty of money. So again, here's where they get the edge. Okay. Everybody wants to talk about what they can't do with this, but teams like the Canadians, go look at their scouting list and you'll see that they've got like, I don't know, like 35 people underemployed there because they have an unlimited budget.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that are unlimited in this league too that aren't tracked like we talk about with the front office and everything. So you can make it up.
Yeah, and that's where I think, is there something to it? Maybe. Is it the overall determining factor? No. So I don't know how you change it. I think it just kind of is what it is. But certainly a topic of conversation and a topic that I think doesn't really affect the Flyers in any
No.
way. I think it's the Flyers wanting to build a successful team, and that issue isn't gonna change whether or not they can do it. But still a little chatter going on about that
Oh
around the
yeah,
league.
there's always going to be whining about this. Always.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, we still don't know that list, but there are some big questions that are kind of maybe out there a little bit related to rookie camp and training camp. We are going to get to those coming up next. Some of the best concerts of the year take place in the summer leading into the fall. It's my favorite time to head to a show. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. My favorite part of the Game Time app is that it's great for getting notified about last minute flash deals and super deals so you know you're getting the best bang for your buck. Best of all, they have all in pricing, so there's no surprise fees at checkout when you activate that feature. Also, tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through email. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem with the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NHL podcast. Locked On NHL provides you with a national perspective on all things NHL each and every day with national experts and local insights on every team in the league. You can find me there every Friday. It's available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We have our poll question out there still in terms of what y'all out there think the Flyers are going to do this season and what their record is going to be relative to last season. So make sure you get your voice heard. There's a link to that poll in the show notes. It's on our YouTube channel. So make sure you put in your vote there. Heading into rookie camp and then training camp, I think, we have like basically what the roster is. And so, you know, can we break outside of what we think we know? And are there some, plot twists that could emerge through camp? And I think for me, that first plot twist question is, just Jet Luchenko have a shot at the roster? And would that be a good or bad thing?
I mean, if Jet Luchenko had this meteoric rise like Connor Bedard, yeah, it'd be an okay thing, but it's not going to happen. So he doesn't have a shot at the roster. It's just a matter of how long do they want to let him, stay in camp, play preseason games.
Yeah, I feel like they're gonna keep him around a little bit longer than maybe we would have expected and get him in some more games.
Hmm.
I don't know that he'll get on the roster to play NHL games. I just don't see that as a possibility given, the roster constraints that the Flyers have. But I mean, who knows? Stranger things have happened. But I think he would have to really blow everybody away and really just fit into the system very well, and really stand out to torts, which is possible that he'll do. I think
Well,
that,
you know what the other complication that just kind of hit me? The other complication is now you're asking John, which, I don't care. Coaches should have to deal with anything that's working. Then he's got to deal with Michkov and that. I think that's going to be too
yeah.
much to ask him to deal with. I don't think he's going to want to deal with all that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a possibility. But related to that, it has been suggested by some that Luchenko's center Michkov in the rookie series games this weekend.
Yeah,
So,
sure. I mean, but I got a text, don't play Michkov in the rookie games. I'm like, why? He's a rookie. Like, you can't shield this guy. He needs to
yeah,
play. You can get hurt doing anything. You can get hurt in practice. Like, he has to play. So, no, I like that idea.
I do too, because I think A, you want to get a sense of what the future could look like. And B, I think both of these guys have a tremendous amount of pressure on them. So put them together and see if
Yeah.
they step up.
Yeah.
And I think putting them together allows them to kind of be in it together
Hmm.
and not overly concentrate eyes on both of them individually, but look at them as a unit and see, do they adjust well to each other's playing style? I think that's a really fascinating question.
Yeah, I definitely would buddy them up just for the simple fact that they're going to be teammates in the future, two important guys for the organization. Start familiarizing yourself with each other now.
Yeah, let's go for it. I think it'd be a lot of fun,
Yeah.
honestly.
Oh, yeah. I think
I
it'd
would
be
I
great.
would love to see that. You're looking at some other players and who are closer to, maybe, I mean, we know Mitchkoff is going to be on the roster, but as far as like the other prospects, maybe some guys that are closer to the NHL level and are possibly going to go pro at the end of this season. Oliver Bonk is a standout player, and it leads me to wonder, like, should he get some NHL games this season and then get sent back at like less than 10 games, so he doesn't burn the year. But do we want to see him in an actual NHL game this year?
I really don't. Uh, they're loaded with defensemen, and this is including like Addard and such down below. I just don't see it. He could look great, and this is just a situation, where you just send him back because it's like, hey, kid, you look great. We got you next year. Maybe you won't have to go back to London. That if you learn that, then that's great.
Yeah, I think, I think about last season and Emil Andre and
Yeah,
him making
and
the
that's what I was
roster.
thinking, Andre too. Yeah,
Right. But in terms of him having to get sent down, like, I think it worked out for Andre in the grand scheme of things because I think he did take the time he needed and had a good rest of his season in Lehigh and progressed, like, consistently over the course of the season, and put himself in a good spot. But again, there's not really room for him on the roster there.
no,
But in the Bonk situation, we know 100% that he's getting sent back. So if the expectation up front is, we're going to give you one or two NHL games just to see what you can do and send you back, that's kind of like you know, just a free chance at making an impact without really the pressure to try and earn a roster spot to stick around, because we know what the end result is going to be. Whereas with Andre, he earned the roster spot but wound up getting sent down, and that could be demoralizing.
right.
But with Bonk, it wouldn't be demoralizing because the expectation would be set ahead of time, but we would learn what he's like up against NHL competition.
Right. The only advantage was Andre could be sent down to the AHL. Bonk can't play in the AHL. So,
Right.
look, I wouldn't be against giving him an NHL game, but it's on the road. It's going to be against the Vancouver Canucks. There's no way John's doing this.
Yeah. I just think it's an interesting question. I don't know that it would happen,
Yeah.
but I certainly, again, depending on how he does in camp and if he stands out and if he looks stronger, because this past season for him was really good. And I think he got better and better over the course of this past season. But you know, again, there just isn't room. So
No.
it would be a hard thing to do, but I think it would be fun. At
And
the
we're not
same
saying there
time,
isn't room because like this is a championship team. There just isn't room based on the guys they have in the
the
structure.
contracts, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, related to that, I think that you look at Rasmus Ristolainen, right, and his spot on the D, and to a slightly lesser extent, Nick Delorier on the forward side of things. You know, are we going to get clues in training camp as to what the plan is for these guys as far as minutes and usage, like in the preseason games? So that we know maybe if there's opportunities for other guys.
We know what the plan is for Delorier. I expect Michkov to be on the third line with Delorier. That's what I expect. And so I think that's the plan. Just hearing Ristolainen's name will be the first time we've actually heard it from a coach or the Flyers in like 3 or 4 months. It's just he's been MIA. We haven't heard anything. I haven't seen a picture. I have you?
Nope,
Nothing. So
nothing.
I can't
Well,
predict anything for
unless
him because
somebody's seen him in Voorhees at
yeah,
the rink, just hanging out
or a
there.
Chipotle, or a Chipotle.
Okay.
They all hang out at Chipotle. They do. Pancheros is better, by the way, but they go to Chipotle, so that's fine.
All right. Coming up next, you've got some questions in our mailbag, including some good ones about contracts and opportunities for younger players. We're going to get to them coming up next.
We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching hire and hiring platform with over 350 million global visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. One of the things I love about Indeed is it makes hiring all in one place so easy because you can avoid all that busy work. I use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. So just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Digging into our listener mailbag, Michael S. over on YouTube commented, too many younger guys are going to need new deals soon. York, Drysdale, Forster, we're going to need more ELCs soon. That should be incentive in camp. So this is related to our conversation about what's the incentive to
Right.
create competition in camp. So eventually trades will happen for cap reasons. If we have to trade Frost or Farabee or Lawton, the work the prospects put in today will help them be the one to fill in those spots in a year or two.
So what's the question? It seems
Well,
more like
this
a
is
statement.
it is a statement, but this is like, is this an incentive for competition
Okay.
in rookie camp?
I mean, yeah, there's always an incentive, but sure. But I can honestly tell you, players don't look that far ahead. They really don't. Their agent might tell them when they have a meeting, hey, this could happen, that could happen, whatever. But once they hit the ice, they're just looking at the here and now. I know people think that's cliche, but it's really not. Like they don't look too far down the road because if you do, you really do get into trouble. So I don't think it adds anything more because we don't know any answers to these questions. We're assuming that Lawton will get traded. We don't know that. We're assuming that Farabee could be dealt or Frost could be dealt, but it's also possible none of them get dealt. You don't know what's going to happen because we don't know about injuries, and that's how players play it because they know They control what they can control. These are things they can't control, and we hear that too many times to not believe it.
Right, and I think the way that Flyers camp is structured and how difficult it is with John Tortorella, like, th that's enough as far as in their own individual silos for these
Right,
players in terms of putting the effort there. But in terms of creating competition between them, that's where I think it's missing, that there isn't really a reason to look for comparisons between some of these players to determine the roster spots. This is all about competition these guys have with themselves in the
right,
eyes of John Tortorella. And I think
right,
that's the distinction, at least that I make here
right.
in
But we
this
don't
year's
even know what the
camp.
future holds for him. His contract's getting thin now, and it's on the thinner side. We don't know.
Yeah. But I do think seeing what Drysdale looks like in camp is going to be something to keep an eye on,
Sure.
just because we haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, I mean,
And it,
even if Emil Andre looks better than Jamie Drysdale, Drysdale's getting the job.
right. Yeah, I think so. But I mean, I don't know. Crazy things have happened, but I do think Drysdale's getting the job, especially because of the whole power play issue, which
Right.
is again, which
A
is
disaster.
right. But it's a good lead in to a comment from Today Us on YouTube, who said Drysdale will make the power play go. Everyone else has to take a step forward, and Michkov will add to it. So, like, do we think that's a possibility, or is this something we're going to have to see in camp and see how the power play looks in the preseason?
I think it's a work in progress because it's easy to say, hey, Drysdale got hurt. He never got on track. But honestly, when he was playing, we only saw him being allowed to be Jamie Drysdale a couple of games where he could bring the puck, do what he wanted, and find the open guys and get that to go. They were changing the power play so often that he didn't get that chance. It's the same coach. So how do I believe he's going to get that chance this year? I don't know. And we know John's not going to interrupt the way the coaches do it. He's going to leave him alone. John doesn't talk about the power play. That's it. He's
Yeah,
going to leave that alone.
yeah.
So I can't tell you that's going to be better. And again, you're asking Michkov to come in here now and just make the power play better as a rookie. I don't know that's happening.
Well, the system has to be better in
Right.
order. It doesn't
The
matter what he
system that
does
matters more than the
individually.
player. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that's what we're looking for is a system that works better and then players that execute it more successfully. That's how we're gonna
I
get
mean, the
there with the
architect of this
power
system has had 2 years, Rachel. Is third year going to be the charm? I mean, come on.
play.
We'll see.
Well, oh, that's another topic for another day. But I
Yes.
think, when we get to like late November, we'll be able to evaluate that.
Yes.
Richard on Twitter has a good point and talks about a player that we've brought up a lot on the show, saying it's crazy how it goes. If you weren't drafted, you get completely overlooked, even if you're doing well. JR Avon gets no mentions and might have a good chance. High drafted players get second and fifth and sixth chances. It's nuts. You're looking at the investment over the quality of play. And I think that's fair in some cases. I think, I love JR Avon. I
Yeah,
love
we've talked about him a lot on the show. We have, but
yeah,
that doesn't mean he's getting the job. Um, he's got time though. He's 21. He has to have a really good year in the AHL to even, have this discussion. It's not to say he won't. I do get his point. I wish teams and some teams do this where it doesn't matter after you draft it, you're just thrown into the pond and you got to swim your way out. But there's too many
right.
teams that will give too many chances to first round picks, former first round picks, and things like that. But I also could say that Avon may be up against the fact that the other administration really liked him and John may not have any time for it. Not because he doesn't like the kid, just because he's not even thinking about him.
Yeah, and sometimes that happens. It's
Yes.
unfortunate,
Yeah.
but it does. But we're certainly in the JR Avon fan club,
Absolutely.
and I certainly hope that he has a really good year in Lehigh Valley and makes it impossible for them not to consider calling him up when and if the time comes.
Yeah.
For sure. Last question here from Jeremy. We know Torts wants guys to quote unquote play the right way. Will Mitchkov have a problem molding his game to that system?
Will he have a problem with it? Probably. It's going to take an adjustment. It's, he's been asked to do this in Russia and he's struggled with it. Like we've read about it. So he knows what's coming. He's a prideful guy. So he basically will always tell you, just watch me on the ice, you'll see. But the thing is, in this John Tortorella system, you don't get to freewheel, not until you can show you could play that 200-foot game. So we may not see some of the greatness of Michkov for half a season because they may tamp down some of that stuff while he's learning the Torts way.
Yeah, I think it'll be an interesting balance to
Yeah.
see how much how much constraint they put on him and his game just while he's learning the system. We talked about the fact that he's been working with Joel Farabee a little bit.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good thing because I think Farabee knows the upside and downside of trying to play your own game and what happens when you don't. So
Right.
I feel like he's a really good person to give Michkov advice to in terms of how you earn your way to ice time in the Tort system.
I mean, the one thing I could definitely say is if you watch a lot of Michkov, he's not going to be able to vacate the defensive zone as quickly as he was doing in Russia, and I'm being kind there.
Yeah, I
The
think
coach
that
isn't.
is
The coach is not going to allow that.
no, I think you're spot on there. But again, another thing to keep an eye on and why we want to see him at rookie camp.
Yep.
The announcement did not come during this recording, but assuming it comes out soon thereafter,
Just
you
like
can check
Christmas,
our
it's coming.
socials. Yeah. Well, it's not even Halloween yet, Russ. Let's like
I
pump
know.
the
I'm
brakes
just
on
saying, it's just a state. It's just
that. But
something that's thrown out there. That's all.
yeah, absolutely. But keep an eye on our socials for the latest on rookie camp. The two of us will be there at various points over the weekend. So look for our reporting as well. We will have more mailbag questions answered next week. So make sure to get yours in on Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment over on YouTube. On the Friday show, we're going to preview the rookie series with our pal John over at Locked On New York Rangers. So that should be fun. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen today. Now go check out the Locked On NHL podcast where the season never ends, providing national expertise with a local perspective. You can find the link to Locked On NHL in the show notes so you don't have to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.